All right, class, welcome back from break. For day one, we're going to start off with collective behaviors. This again is part of our new unit that's addressing how societies change and shift over time. And so today you're going to be looking at collective behaviors, which are just temporary changes to our culture and shifts to the norms that we follow. All right, your assignment is to make a mind map. So here's an example of what one would look like. You'll have one central idea, and then from that central idea, you'll have these different branches coming out from it. Each branch should have its own topic, name that everything coming off of it relates to. So, for example, you could make a branch for each collective behavior type, or you could group them together by collective behaviors that are scary versus fun versus violent or whatever. So you can have as many or few branches as you like, and then from those branches, you'll then break them down into little tiny subsections. You can use words, you can use images, but you want to try and organize it in such a way by making use of colors and descriptive words to help clarify how all these things are kind of mapped together and connected within your mind. You can do this on paper and submit a picture of it. Just make sure it's a flat image that fills the full screen. Or again, there's a ton of apps that you can use and download on your iPad or websites you can use online and then just submit the final product through to me. But if you have any questions about it, just either email me or you can Zoom to me and we can work out your problems together. So let's take a look at the different types of collective behaviors. All right, one of the most famous ones, common ones, would be riots. And we're going to talk a lot more about riots next class. But riots is a form of collective behavior where it's a temporary burst of violence. All right, these violent outbursts change society by either having an outlet leash of anger built up from tensions within the environment, or they can lead to continuing changes. Right, so for example, the image that I have on the right, that's of the Haymaker riots. This is the big clashes between controlling management companies and unions that were trying to get better workers' rights. Right, these violent outbursts between management and worker unions actually created a more structured labor law system and regulations of managements to make sure that they aren't taking advantage of the workers, but also promoting economic growth and productivity for the nation. If you look at the image that's on the left, this is of the Zoot Suit riots. These happened on the West Coast during the Great Depression, World War II era. It was racial conflicts between white sailors and soldiers that were suffering from rationing that was going on in the country versus Mexican American communities where they wanted to demonstrate that they've made it and they had money and wealth, and so they were buying these giant suits that used a lot of fabric that kind of took away fabric that could have gone towards the soldiers' uniforms. And so these tensions kind of erupted between the different value sets of the two racial groups within the West Coast. So we use riots as a way of having an outburst of violent anger in the hopes of resolving the conflict peacefully, or just letting people be angry and be violent, and then things go back to their normal simmering tensions that we have. All right, we also have rumors. Rumors is another type of collective behavior where it's false information that is being spread about an individual or a group. All right, I have a quote here from Jared Leto. You know you're really famous when there are rumors about you being gay. But we make a lot of rumors about famous celebrities. I feel like every other year there's a Twitter story going out there that Betty White has passed away when she's still doing fine and well. But there's this, we are very fascinated by the lives of famous people. And so we spread rumors about them built off of half-truths or just complete false information. In the 1980s, there was a rumor that Disney was hiding subliminal sexual images within most of their films. And that's not true, but there is so much confusion and interest in Disney and how powerful it had grown that we spread these false information out there. And so these rumors, they let you know some anxieties that our society might have about mysteries out there. A lot of conspiracy theories are built upon rumors that are out there. And so these rumors will shift the way people think and believe, and therefore how do we interact with others in the future. You could look at panics, which is another type of collective behavior. This is where those deep-seated anxieties lead to all-out fear within the society. The most famous case of a panic would be the War of the Worlds airing. A radio did a telecast of this book, and they made it into a script. And before the entire episode started, they said, this is fake, this is all fictional, these are just hired actors, it's not real. But people who tuned in midway through the broadcast, they thought they were listening to a real news segment, and they thought that they were hearing aliens landing, and they had eyewitness accounts of people talking about seeing that Martians coming out of their spaceships. And people got so scared that they packed up their houses and took to the streets and tried to drive away from their homes because they were just so scared of this evil entity that was there. You could also point to the panic on Wall Street on Black Tuesday that led into the Great Depression. Right? As stocks slowly started to drop, more and more people started selling off their stock options. And as more and more people started selling, well, those stocks started dropping faster and faster, which led to an increased anxiety and this panic. And so the fear is that everyone started rushing to Wall Street to sell their stocks. And then when all the money was gone from there, we're like, well, I need to get my money out of the bank. So they all rushed to the banks and took all the money out, so that many banks actually closed because they just didn't have any more funds within their banking systems. And so these panics or these fears where they have to run away, they have to escape because there's a current threat that's out there trying to corrupt us. Right? Similar to panics are moral panics. All right, with moral panics, these are a perceived evil that's currently present in society, and it leads to us targeting people that we believe are those evils. The Salem witch trials, that's a big example of a moral panic. This fear around witchcraft, of magic and how it could influence and corrupt society, led to people targeting individuals within their society, specifically usually women that were marginalized, so they were elderly, or they thought that they were weird, they were on the poor side of the community, and so those women were most likely to be targeted because they matched our stereotype of what is a witch, and they were easily persecuted for the fear that was present within that society. Same thing with the Red Scare that consistently comes up within American culture. This fear of communism that's out there, and it's going to corrupt society and destroy our values. And so individuals that we thought of as communists, we would put them up for the McCarthy trials, or they would be barred from being able to apply for a job, when more often than not they just had different ideals, they had different values, and were trying to change and shift society. And because of that perceived evil that's going to corrupt our good, upstanding morals, they would target these individuals that try to shift and change those value sets. Right? We also have something known as mass hysteria. And people sometimes confuse it with panics, but these are different. All right, with mass hysteria, it's a perceived threat in the environment that actually causes physical body changes to you. If you've taken a psychology class, a lot of the disorders within psychology are physical manifestations of internal anxieties. We call them somatoform disorders. For example, during this quarantine social distancing moment, has anyone ever convinced themselves that maybe you had the coronavirus? Right? Most people, they may be asymptomatic, but that fear, that anxiety actually will make us be more aware of any physical changes and might convince you that you have it, which adds into that panic, that fear that we have. Sometimes this can become epidemic, where people catch these weird diseases that actually have no physical cause, but they do begin to behave differently. I have an example here of the meowing nuns, where just by being around them and thinking that there was something in the environment that would make them meow, actually had them walking around like packs of cats meowing until, soldiers beat them up and then they dispersed. There was an epidemic in France where people thought they were turning to glass, and so they would lay in bed and they just wouldn't move. And it was because of a paranoia of what the king had. And so being around the king made more noblemen susceptible to it, and then those communities around the noblemen, their families started to get it, and it just kind of like slowly dissipated throughout the entire rural population as well. So with the mass hysteria, it's where there's a perceived threat in the environment that actually causes physical body changes to individuals in that society. All right, so it's not a panic where I'm afraid of some external source. I actually internalize that fear and it changes me physically inside. All right, fads are a little bit more fun. These are temporary shifts to our norms and behaviors. Toys are an easy thing to look at. When I was growing up, Tamagotchis were really big. They were those little like pocket toys that you had. In the 80s, it would be like the Rubik's Cubes. In the 50s, it would be hula hoops or different dance crazes that they had. There were a lot of like dance styles that everyone would follow. Like the twist was a very popular one. Right, these fads are temporary changes. It'll impact the toys that we play with, the types of clothes that we wear. So if you think of like the 1970s bell-bottom pants that were very cool, probably not so big anymore. The types of words that we use. So rad or tubular, everyone used that a lot in the 80s. We don't really use that so much now. It's these fads are just temporary shifts and changes to our norms of how we dress and what we do and how we talk, but they don't have any long enduring changes. Fashion, on the other side, those are enduring changes. All right, again, it could be the clothing that we have. So jeans, they came out during the gold rush era and they became so popular that they've just kind of stuck around, and that's now a new normal way that people dress. It can impact our language, so saying the word cool, that's now still a thing we say, even though it was developed and started in like the 1940s, 1930s. Right? So these language things, these clothing things, the food that we eat, right, they became popular in the moment, and then they've kind of continued on. Right? So fads, they're just temporary, they're short term. Sometimes they'll come back and disappear. But fashions, they're kind of here to stay. So once they're cool, they'll remain cool and they become embedded and entrenched in the way that culture behaves moving forward. All right, and then the last collective behavior are urban legends. Right? This isn't Bigfoot. This isn't the Loch Ness Monster. Right? An urban legend is a story that sounds like it could be true, but it's all false. So there was a cheesy horror movie that was built upon all these urban legends that are out there. And so if you're bored and you want to watch it, go ahead, have at it. But like, for example, the Hookman is a famous urban legend. There was a couple, they were on a date, they went to a secluded area so that they could make out, and then they heard this scratching outside of the car. And so the guy decided he was going to go off and look for it, and then he never came back. And then what they found out later on is that there was a asylum where somebody had broken out, and so this Hookman had like murdered the boyfriend. And it's supposed to teach the lesson, well, don't go to dark places by yourself, like, teaching chastity, and like if they weren't there making out, they would never have been in a dangerous situation. So these urban legends are stories that sound like they could be true, but they're actually trying to teach a lesson or indicate a hidden fear within a society. There's the story of, oh, you shouldn't go and use tanning bed so often because it'll cook you from the inside out. Like, no, that's not true, but it shows this fear of new technologies that are out there. All right, so those are just some basic examples and definitions of what the different collective behaviors are. All right, so use this information, use your textbook to go through and help you create your mind map. All right, again, if you have any questions, please feel free to email me or see me at Zoom at noon. And welcome back to distance learning. I don't know how to stop this.